All right, you guys, we are rolling. So I'm joined today. I'm Sam with Body Bar Pilates, and I've got Dan and Jason who are from FranSite, and then I've got Randy from CDS. These are our site selection and build out partners. So I know there's a lot of questions right now kind of circulating about what is the current climate, what's going on, and I think it's always best to let the experts speak. So I'm going to turn it over. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to start with FranSite here. And if you guys would just introduce yourselves, tell a little bit about your time in the space and kind of what you do. And then we can nail into some questions kind of about what's going on out there.
Sure. Let me start out. I'm Dan Mitchell. I'm one of the co-founders of FranSite, which we founded 9 years ago. I've been in business for 50 years, but the last 9 years have been specializing in national rollouts for franchisors and franchisees. And during that time, we have done literally hundreds and hundreds of transactions in many different franchise concepts with coincidentally, a lot of activity in the boutique fitness arena. And during our careers, Jason, David, and I together have over 100 years of commercial real estate experience. We've done 30 million square feet of transactions. Best way to equate that is a regional mall is typically about 1 million square feet. So amongst the three of us, we've filled 30 regional malls over our career. And in terms of value, that's about $7 billion worth of value. So to say we've seen a few things, it would be an understatement. We've been around the block quite a bit. For me, this is I think this is my 7th recession. I started in the business back in the 70s, right at the time that we had the fuel crisis. Nobody could get gasoline. It was 3-block long wait at the pump to get gasoline. It devastated retail. We came back from that. In the 80s, it was 22% prime interest. It stifled everything. We came back from that. In the 90s, we had the Iraq War. That was a real shock to the system. Then we had 2001. We had 9/11. Needless to say, that was another shock to the system. And then the most recent one before this was in 2008, when we had the housing crisis and the bubble. And as a result, there was no money available. Lenders just didn't have any confidence to be able to lend to anybody. Again, a devastating aspect to the real estate industry. And from 2008 right on up until about 2014, it was truly a tenant market. Because there was a lot of supply and not that much demand. But because there was no new construction during that period of time, ultimately supply and demand equaled out. And so by 2015, it had turned very strongly into a landlord market. And that prevailed up until, pick your timeline, 9 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, was when it changed overnight from a landlord market to a tenant market. And we are clearly in a tenant market. We're expecting to see national vacancy rates increase by double-digit factor. I know with our own company, we're looking at something that will be in the neighborhood of 12 to 15% change in occupancy. That means opportunity for those that are in the market for space. And it's not only just that there's going to be space, there's going to be better quality spaces that historically haven't been available, where there are chains that have failed, and they're not going to come back. So not only are we going to have more availability, I think that the quality is going to be there. The opportunity to make economically advantageous deals, whether it be the rent, the allowance, options, you name it, right on across the board, is going to be great. And couple that with the fact that we have historically low interest rates, this creates just a tremendous, tremendous opportunity. And we see this every 8 to 10 years, and every time it has a relatively short life cycle to it. So this, to me, for those that have the ability and the desire, is a great time to jump into the marketplace.
For sure.
That is cool.
I'll take over. So My name is Jason Rush, also a member of Fransight. I come from a couple of complementary, if you will, parallel career paths to the industry. I spent about 10 years in various forms of construction, industrial, commercial, residential. I've got 15 years as a licensed broker in various capacities from investment real estate, landlord, asset management, leasing, the whole 9 yards. And I spent just about 5 years in franchise development. So certainly recognize the complementary, the coupled relationships between real estate and construction. We think about taking a space from whatever given capacity, whether that's a first generation space or a second generation space, and understanding not only the negotiation of the real estate term side of it, but also trying to help tee up for the franchisee an understanding of the construction side, and then giving that visibility to the construction partner. So I'd have to say that I've seen a couple of these cycles through real estate and construction, as Dan touched on. I certainly think it's a matter of timing. The time is certainly a here and now, if you will. We're certainly going to see a little softening in rents. We're going to see some additional motivation from the general contractor construction world. But I also, again, when I think of timing, I do think that's going to be, I use the word short-lived, if you will. That does have a shelf life. Landlords aren't real big on leaving money on the table, and GCs are pretty good about the same. So, but certainly think this is a good time as it relates to, I hate to use the word perfect storm, but when we think about vacancies, landlord motivation, GC construction, contractor motivation, I'd have to say adding all of those up, those become fairly favorable for brand expansion and obviously new franchisees entering the market.
As you guys speak with landlords and we kind of take a look at some of those things, are you seeing a trend in what they're looking for in tenants, or is there something, do they become more discerning during these times?
Yeah, let me grab that one if I can. A couple of things. One is that they are looking for things that are, let's call it Jeff Bezos resistant. The landlords are looking for something where they're going to have customers coming to the center, and that in these recent weeks, people that hadn't embraced having home delivery have found out how easy it is, and it's going to change the retail front for a long time to come. So the first thing that they're looking for is something that is going to be somewhat internet resistant. Personal services, boutique, fitness, restaurant, etc. Things that you're going to come to the center, and if you can bring a high quality customer profile, and you're bringing that customer with some degree of frequency, that's kind of the gold standard that landlords are looking for. And they're also going to be, because dollars are very, very important, they want something that has some track record, some experience to it. So if we're talking about a franchise brand and your franchisee X in Scottsdale, Arizona, that is interested in a space, and then we've got John and Sue over here that would like to do a similar business, but they're not affiliated with a brand that has a track record, 95% of the time, the landlord is going to opt to go with that national presence brand, because they do have marketing support, they've got training, they've got a business plan, they've got a track record of success, and equally importantly, they have a track record of things not to do that most people new in business think that's a great idea, and it turns out that the last 20 people that have tried it found out not such a good idea, and landlords are well aware of that.
Very good. That's exactly what we were looking for there. I know that it's kind of a different time, and a lot of people that are looking at businesses now haven't possibly looked at businesses before. So I think it's important to note, and I think that's the reason a lot of us get into franchising in the first place, is we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We kind of want that business in a box. So it's interesting to hear that landlords oftentimes look at it the same way that we do in the franchise industry.
Kind of speaking from the development side, I was going to expand and speaking from the development side and that landlord asset manager side. Yeah, that's peace of mind. Again, recognizing, like Dan said, there's a track record, there's a process. If they say they're going to do something, more time than not, that is going to be fulfilled, rather than I say the mom and pop, if you will, certainly not throwing rocks at them, but a mom and pop, they don't have the systems, they don't have the process, they don't have the what not to do, if you will, which franchise concepts have certainly, they learn what to do, and they'll also learn very quickly what not to do. And that also means to the landlords, there's also opportunities for conforming deals. The mom and pop is a one and done, if you'll, recognizing national launches and expansions and brands and franchise concepts. I, as a landlord, have an opportunity. If I'm striking one deal in one market with this concept, I very likely have the opportunity to strike another deal with that concept in another market in one of my centers, which obviously translates to money to me as a landlord, which is at the end of the day the most important thing to me, being the landlord.
Absolutely. Do you guys have anything else that you want to share before we get to the construction side about what you're seeing just from site selection and rent rates, any of those things?
Just as a general overview, we're still in the process right now of the market finding its level.
Correct.
With the CARES Act in place, that's propping up some retailers that are not going to make it. They were already weak before this happened, but right now they're being propped up by the federal government. We think that things are going to dramatically change here in the next 60 to 90 days as those funds have run out. And again, we think that that's when the new norm is going to start to establish because the artificial subsidies are going to be gone.
Very good. That's interesting too. So Randy, that hands, oh, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I was just saying that when we think about kind of franchisees or new franchise candidates and entering the market, and this is kind of my development hat coming on, is when Dan mentions those timelines, certainly when we think about someone coming in, signing, getting their feet in, getting their site selections, getting started in the site selection, understanding the market, pushing these things 2 and 3 months out, I think certainly parallel in timing by way of getting position, but also being able to take advantage of what we will say as the water finds level, if you will.
Absolutely. And I know with Body Bar right now, we've extended our lease signing out for 12 months just to allow people, instead of the traditional 60 days. So as we speak about that in the next few months, they'll have the opportunity to work with you guys and see what the conditions are right after signing, and then maybe wait another 60 days to see where they're at. So I think it's necessary for franchisors to take a look at the fact that this is kind of an unprecedented time. At least for us. For you guys, this is old hat. You're just going through the cycle and you kind of know what to look for and what the indicators are as we come back and get our footing back.
Well, something Dan initiated a couple of weeks ago was interviewing our entire broker network, 145 plus brokers across the country, to help our brands, our franchisees and candidates understand what are we seeing, what are they experiencing, what's the finger on the pulse in those various markets. And actually recently Dan did a presentation with that data, and it's pretty powerful across the country. I mean, a lot of similarities, but certainly understand the nuances to each of those markets, and again, keeping a finger on the pulse.
I think that's what's so great. It's just that national presence and your ability to gauge things, because it really is, the Midwest is very different from the West Coast, from the East Coast. And in the case of a pandemic, which is unprecedented, I think all areas have been hit completely differently too. And their reopening strategy and their business strategy is going to look different.
For sure.
So with that, I do want to hand it over, Randy. If you're ready to rock and roll on your part, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Randy is with CDS, and they cover all the build outs for Body Bar, and they work in tandem with FranSite when you're choosing site selection, and they really work to make sure that your projects are done safely, on time, and on budget. So if you just want to talk about first just yourself for a minute and kind of CDS, and then I'd love to dig into what you guys are seeing out there right now.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Randy, CDS Development. I've been here for, 6 years now, going on 6+ years. CDS has been around for 20 plus years. We, we touch about 100 to 125 franchise franchise locations a year. So easiest way to think about us is your owner's rep. We take you from the LOI all the way to executing your lease, or not executing your lease, but turning over the space to you to get open. That's kind of the cliff notes of what we do real quick.
Very good. So for you guys, as you're going through this, I know you're in touch with projects that were currently in production. You're also rebidding projects, doing some of those things. Are there any trends that you're seeing right now, just as a whole, in projects that you're bidding or rebidding?
Yeah, so currently with today's market, we're seeing that the GCs are currently bidding a little bit less than what we're normally. So I would say that the average general contractor's numbers are coming in, don't quote me on it, but 10% less, 10, 15% less than what we're normally used to seeing. And it's just because the general contractors are hungry. I do think that the cost will increase over a year back to where it was before. But right now, man, it's a great time to build. Very
good. Are you seeing anything else on the project side that has changed in the last 7 to 8 weeks? Or is there anything with build outs that that's kind of been more of a dramatic change?
The only thing that we're really seeing right now is we're having to add a couple of weeks to the schedule, 2 to 3 extra weeks, due to just having to work a drywall contractor all by himself, and then the next day is the electrician, where before we were able to run those together side by side. So I think that we're adding, a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks to a schedule, and trying to just really micromanage that process to still streamline and get these locations open.
Very good. Very good. Anything else that you want to share about CDS? I know you guys, probably a lot of the similar things what FranSite shared, but anything else that you just feel like is important that potential business owners know about the process or the build out process?
Man, I could talk about that for hours. Like I said, CDS, we've been around, we've been doing this for a long time. We've been doing franchise development for a long, long time. Like I said a minute ago, the easiest way to think of CDS is we pretty much take you, once you find your real estate selection, you go through that LOI phase. And once you find that perfect location, we pretty much take it from there and run you all the way through the end. So, I mean, we're taking you through due diligence. We're taking you through your construction drawings, taking you through permitting. We're taking you through, your tenant allowance, helping you with your SBA loan. It's just a huge, we just do a ton of work. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but I'm trying to, I could talk about what we do for an hour plus.
Well, I know our reviews from franchisees that are currently in the process, because we have a lot of semi-absentee franchisees. So I think just the help that, all of you guys on the call bring to the table as far as site selection, where they're not driving around local markets looking for it, and then trying to manage general contractors, cost adjustments, and staying on time. I mean, that's a huge deal to potential franchisees, especially franchisees that intend to keep their jobs, at least for the time being. Those services and what you guys provide, to be able to just take it from A to Z, it's huge. And I don't think that they would be able to do the build outs or manage the business without, having you guys on board. Or it would be very much more difficult and we see way more expensive. We have Matt shares that in his stuff, is that he found out he paid fees that weren't even real fees when he started working with you guys for their next build out. So it's definitely needed, and it brings it just brings, I think, a really good, you guys work in tandem to the process. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically take everything off of your plate as the franchisee. So you, like I said a minute ago, you find that space, we take it from there. So then you can go back to focus on whatever you were doing to get you to be able to be a franchisee and focus on that. And then we micromanage everything for you. We're looking at the GC selection. We're looking at your construction drawings. We're doing it all. That way you can focus on developing the business, right? You're out promoting the brand, if you will, and not worried about what the general contractor is doing, not worried about pay apps, not worried about all that other, there's a lot of tasks there.
And to that point, I can tell you that with a couple of the brands that we've worked with in the past, they've actually tracked when they've used a combination of FranSite and CDS versus those that opted to do it on their own, and the level of execution by the franchisee that used our services so they could concentrate on getting their hiring program right, getting their training right, et cetera, versus those that were having to worry about, okay, I got to find this location. Now I got to find an architect. Now I've got to find a GC. Now I got to be out there finding out if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And because of all that time, we're not devoting the time to getting ready to open their business.
Right.
And the performance level between the two is noticeable with those that were able to concentrate on their business doing way better.
To expand on that, so as I mentioned earlier, I had 5 years of franchise development and actually had the luxury of both Fransite and CDS being on my roster of preferred network partners. And I had 5 years of data tracking from a number of brands, from expansions to fledgling startups, and tracking the use, the timelines, the results that they got using the system. I won't just give it just to Fransite, just to CDS, applying the business in a box that the brand brought to the table, all those processes, procedures, systems, the network of players, if you will, being able to track those deals and timelines, success, what they were able to accomplish versus the individuals who went off on their own, if you will, not that they didn't have the occasional success, but being able to run those two data points parallel. There was no comparison as it relates to the deals, the timelines, the concessions that we were able to receive from leveraging the program and all of the players versus a one-off situation. Even if they came to the table with a great real estate guy and a great construction guy, they didn't have the ability to leverage any conforming, any of the data, any of the lessons learned, if you will, from the program as a whole. And I tracked that for 5 years and can say there is no comparison in the two.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I think right now, I think that's imperative, especially in this market, because you guys are so much more up on the trends. You're so much more up on what to expect. And, when the market is stagnant or when we know what to expect, I think it's still imperative to have you guys in place. But right now, especially having experts with their finger on the pulse of current stuff, I think it's more important now than ever.
There's a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of turmoil as well, if you will. With that unknown is opportunity, but there's also just as much opportunity for folks to get themselves in situations that maybe initially look favorable, but as it relates to the long term, when we're talking about a 10-year franchise agreement, a 10-year primary term of the lease, want to make sure that it's as good at year 10, if you will, as a whole, not just for year one in the initial structure. So
Right.
Certainly think it's a bigger picture.
Absolutely. Do you guys have anything else that you want to share, with our body bar candidates, and this may go out to a broader base? Is there anything else that you guys would want them to know?
I think from my standpoint, I think I've pretty well covered what I think are the key ingredients. But I also am a great believer in the brand, and I can tell you that it is one that has been very, very well received by the landlord community.
We
That's
really
what
appreciate that.
I was going to
Absolutely.
expand on. I could say how great Fransite and Dan is, and I certainly can speak to the insurance policy and the savings that I saw through my franchise candidates through CDS. But really, in the big picture, what this is about is the brand and the business in a box, those processes, those procedures, those players, putting that in place to carry the franchisee from, again, initial signing through opening and success, and again, helping overcome those pitfalls, those hurdles, those timelines, those triggers that, I say that the devil's in the details, if you will. And that is certainly something I've seen Body Bar, even though I'm not part of the development side, I'm just a support structure. Coming from the development side, they have certainly put in those players, those processes, those procedures, those systems in place to, again, help carry that franchisee to and across the goal line.
Yeah, so I think that from CDS's standpoint, if we really talk about the Body Bar program as a whole, we have spent hundreds of hours developing this program with Matt and Camille, and we've gone out and we've researched and found millwork contractors and signage companies, exterior, interior sign companies. We've created a brand book. We've worked through them with the architect selection. We've done kit of parts, which is the master drawings for a body bar that that we use. So we've done a ton of legwork and ton of research to get the program where it's at today. And I think that's one of the things that we bring to the table that I probably didn't bring up at the beginning, is that we've done hours and hours and hours of research, and we've got everything nailed down to where when you walk in, you don't have to worry about who you're going to use for a millwork guy, who's going to create the reception desk, who you're going to use for your audio visual. We've already selected that out. We've already vetted out the speakers and the sound system. We've already got through the architects. We know who your architect's going to be. We know who your engineer is going to be. We know who's doing your preliminary floor plan. We know who the GCs that we're going to go out to bid with. We've got it all. We've got a nationwide general contractor base all across the U.S. that we go to. There's just so much that like I said earlier, we could talk about for hours and hours that we do, but it's just the best way to describe it is you find the space and then we take it from there and turn you over the keys and you're ready to open. It gives you don't have to worry about any of that. Now, if you were to go outside of that system, then you'll be looking for all those on your own, which you're just going to be killing hours just trying to find and get everything approved. Hope that kind of gives us a nutshell a little bit more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really appreciate you guys getting on today. I know you're busy, probably now more than ever. I think it's supposed to be a time to slow down, and I think a lot of us are speeding up. And I know, Dan, before we started recording, you said, I think we're going to have an uptick in people looking at franchises. And I would say from what we've seen in the activity level in the last few weeks here, you are absolutely right. As people are home, they're kind of weighing their options. And I do think, well, we're seeing it now, which means in about 60 to 90 days, you guys will be seeing it on your side.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll be ready.
Always, right? Thank you guys so much. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll end the recording here and save it.